Texas Tech has flown under the radar for much of the season. No more.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast. Happy Tuesday, everybody. It's the only national daily college hoop show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shader, joining me at the place to get your college basketball content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks so much for making us your first listen or watch. And I want to remind you, you can catch every episode ad-free on Amazon Music. Special shout out to all the everydayers joining us and all the great members of the Locked On College Basketball Discord. It's great to be together. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Joining me today, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chris Level, host of Locked On Texas Tech, does great work there for Texas Tech and being on the sidelines and all the great stuff that Chris does. Folks, if you're not locked in with guns up, you need to be right now. Chris does a great job. So thankful for the work he does. And for those who know, I have family ties in the Lubbock area, and so man, this is a special day for me. Also, check out our full Tuesday show. Andy Patton will be hosting that one. Chris and I are doing a special, like some bonus content here because we've got to get knowing all of these different schools and everything going on. So kind of where we're going today, folks, we're going to look back at Texas Tech's big win down in Houston at the Fertitta Center over the weekend. And man, things are going so well for the Red Raiders. We're going to look ahead to tonight's matchup with Baylor and then just kind of zoom out and take a big picture look at Red Raiders and how things are going in year 2 under Coach McCasland. Chris, great to have you, brother. Let's rewind back to Saturday, 82-81 victory in overtime. And I don't think there's anywhere else we can start than the thing that everyone wants to talk about is this whole ejection of JT Toppin. What was your assessment of that situation, how it should be adjudicated, or perhaps how the rules actually should be rewritten to help refs better in this situation?
Yeah, Isaac, thanks for having me. Wild scene in Houston this past weekend for sure, and I think it kind of set off this chain reaction of events because one ejection led to another, and then I think that maybe propelled the Red Raiders to victory ultimately. But okay, so JT Toppin is double teamed. I think there's like a little over 16 minutes left in the first half of this game. He's throwing out of a double team across the court to one of his teammates, and his leg, he's throwing it with one hand, and the opposite leg is physics, and it just kind of, this is the way the body works, and Joseph Tugler goes down, and you make a three, and they go to timeout, and they go look at it, and we didn't exactly see it live. I mean, I was sitting right there across from the team benches, and I just see Tugler go down. Well, they go look at it, and so there's plenty of things. Okay, there is in the rules, like contact to the groin area constitutes, this or that. But this isn't really my issue with any of what went on. It was the communication or lack thereof. It was the way that rule was read, and that they took it to the extreme. Because if you call a flagrant one or a personal foul and say, hey, like whatever, this is the way the rule is written. Sorry, but to go flagrant 2 and ejection, you are saying intent. You are saying that this is being coached to be done, or that you intended to do this. And like, they didn't ever even tell JT Toppin that he was ejected. He comes out of the huddle after
he's ready to go. Yeah.
And he's like, he's just dumbfounded, like jaw dropped, and they don't really tell Grant at all either. And Coach McCasland goes over to which I think is also another fascinating point, is that many years ago, or actually just previous to 2 years ago, there is no technology on the sideline that allows you to go, but they have an iPad right there, your own stuff, which is allowed to be used and all that. And he looks at it and he just loses it. And all he says was he's passing the ball, but he was animated, and he was. So that's also part of the issue. You have to know as a crew, a head coach is going to lose his mind if you throw out one of his best players with 36 minutes left to go in a top 25 ranked game on the road, and you go over and you say, hey man, you're not going to like this. However, this is what we've deemed it. Yell at me. Let's get it out, and all that. But they team up from across the court, and it's just that it was all just fumbled, in my opinion. And I just don't think managed properly. And there's got to be some common sense.
Yeah.
Based on however the rule is written, but there's got to be some common sense there. Okay, do we think he intentionally – does he have any kind of reputation? No. Does Grant McCasland's team have – no. And so those were my issues, and I just don't think it was managed correctly.
That's a great point, Chris, because we've talked so much about again, I'll just use the phrase adjudication of the rules, that we haven't even really looked at the communication of this, because handled properly by this crew, there are ways to de-escalate and deflate situations like this that crews deal with all the time. And I loved your quote post-game at the Locked On Texas Tech Twitter account sent it out. I thought it was poorly handled. This is part of the dilution when your league expands. There are good officials in this league, but there's just not enough. And so, Chris, my question to you then would be, first off, I'm right with you, man. I love that statement. What would you do to fix that shortfall?
And that's it's Saturday whenever everybody is thin. Because on a Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, you can get veteran guys at different places. And that's part of the problem, too, is maybe these guys are overworked, but they make good money. I mean, there's some of these guys where you can work a college basketball season and you're making, a really nice living. Now, you've got to travel and really it's a grind for a period of time. But so when you get to 16 teams in your league and you've kind of absorbed some of the Pac-12 officials, this is a Brett Yormark problem that he's going to have to address. I don't know whether it's creating a situation where it's like, hey, we need to hire these guys full time so they don't have to worry about other stuff. I don't know whether it's a revenue issue and whether it's a pay structure, or because these officials they work for, forget the exact word for it, but it's like you're not like a Big 12 official.
Right.
You are part of a group that handles these leagues, and typically it's a Power 4 league attached to a Group of 5 league. That's how they're all, and then it's based on where you live and all these kinds of things. I wish I could give you a better answer, but I believe I was told after this game that one of those officials, it was only his second or third Big 12 game to ever work. It wasn't the lead official. And I'm thinking, so this is how you're going to drop them into Houston, Texas on national television with a top 25 ranked, or matchup. And this is going to be his maiden voyage here. That's just a lot to ask. And again, I will say, like, Ray Natili, Kip Kissinger, I mean, there's a lot of good officials that manage the situation properly, or will come visit with and are transparent, and that's all you want. But they created a bit of a powder keg on Saturday because of what I think a lack of common sense on how to handle that.
And even just as you're talking, I'm looking back at the Big 12 slate from Saturday. This is the lone ranked matchup in the conference, right? We got to get our best trio there. And that makes a ton of sense to me. As you already said, though, Chris, I love that we got this ball don't lie moment where ultimately, it's not Rasheed Wallace and a couple free throws, but man, just poetic justice for the Red Raiders to come back, win this game in overtime without JT Toppin in the game, without Coach McCasland on the sideline. And oh, by the way, with Darrion Williams fouling out early in overtime and still able to pull it out. How important was that for the Red Raiders, not only on Saturday, but moving forward this season?
Yeah, Isaac, I would tell, I've been doing this a long time. I would tell you that's one of the most impressive regular season wins in the Big 12 era for Texas Tech's basketball program. You played for a national championship a few years ago. You've won at Allen Fieldhouse. You went to go win in Austin a few years ago when Chris Beard was coaching the Longhorns and nobody gave you a chance. I mean, there's been some interesting regular season games, but when you add in the context, I don't know how you could have stacked the odds more against Texas Tech. and yet that's why it was just a beautiful thing to watch. And I think Kelvin Sampson actually said after the game, the Houston head coach, it sent a lightning bolt through their roster when JT and Coach McCasland were ejected. And he was right. And he said the toughest team won. And you were smaller across the board. You are shorthanded because it wasn't just Darrion Williams. It was Federico. You're one of your bigs, your lone big after JT Toppin gets popped. And he fouled out as well. And you're just looking over there going, we're going to have to play.
Overton was out. Yeah. I mean,
Overton. Yeah. One of these true freshmen, but it was, you've got some guards with just big time basketball IQ. And Christian Anderson, Elijah Hawkins, Chance McMillan, all that. But Jeff Linder was an off-season hire by Grant McCasland. Jeff Linder is the previous head coach at Wyoming. And I think with all the NIL stuff going on and just the sport, I think he was like, man, I think that he and Grant kind of got together, and they're friends from junior college for about 20 years ago in Midland, Texas. And I don't think he wanted to fight the battle of the NIL at the group of 5 level anymore or whatever. And he wanted to go be at a higher level. And so he's the associate head coach. And boy, did he come in handy on Saturday, because you were calm. You were well coached. He kept drawing up great stuff out of timeouts. And it was just one of those things. Sports are nuts sometimes. And this was one of those crazy moments because it made no sense.
No,
it made no sense on paper. I don't know what Vegas says. No Overton, no Toppin, and no McCasland. 6th ranked team in the country. Vegas has to put that spread at 17, 20. Yeah. I don't know, but it's not supposed to happen.
Oh, man, what a game. And consequently, it makes this game hosting Baylor tonight, Tuesday, all the bigger. We're going to get to that and preview that Baylor game a little bit and go big picture on the Red Raiders here in just a second. Right after I tell you about Game Time, man, are you looking for tickets to your next big event? Well, whether it's a concert, a comedy show, or a sporting event, man, finding the right ticket at the right price, that is a headache. But with Game Time Picks, y'all, it has never been easier. Let me tell you how it works real quick. With Game Time Picks, the app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals. You don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings to find the best thing, because Picks does it for you. I've been using Picks now for a while, and man, I love it. Like, I was looking ahead to this Texas Tech hosting Baylor tonight. How about this, Chris Level? You can get in the door for under $30, man. There are tickets for $29, the get-in price. You can even get into the lower baseline for $65. That's $12 off. Maybe come find you, give you a handshake or a hug or something, and say howdy to Mr. Level. Y'all, the best part, you're covered with Game Time's lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal somewhere else, they'll refund 110% of the difference. So are you ready to make your next event even better? Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Terms apply. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, it is Tuesday tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern Central Time for Chris Level and I. It'll be 8 p.m. on ESPN2. The Fighting Scott Drews coming to Lubbock, Texas. Texas Tech has won 6 in a row. Chris, what can we expect out of this game?
Yeah, these are two teams that came off of incredible wins over the weekend in their own right. You know, obviously Baylor was at home, but they came from, I think, what was it, like 21 down, which was a record for, I think, Baylor, or in a not so good record for Kansas. And Baylor's starting to figure it out. However, their issue has been like Texas Tech has. You just really haven't been able to put your team on the floor. There's always been a piece missing or a couple of pieces missing. And I think, Baylor's situation is, I mean, even on Saturday, Edgecombe goes down with, I think, 14 to go. They're waiting to get Jeremy Roach and Langston Love back. I don't know what the lineup will look like. And you could argue the more pieces that Baylor had, trying to incorporate them in front of 15,000 in Lubbock tonight would be a tough place to do it. But I don't know. I don't know what but Rob Wright, one of the most impressive freshmen in the Big 12. And I think Christian Anderson for Texas Tech off the bench has been extremely impressive as well. He's no longer under the radar anymore. But this is, and these two coaches obviously know each other extremely well. They are good friends and all that. But this is just another landmine for really each of these teams. And I think the Red Raiders are in the midst of I can't believe I'm saying this, but you're really in the midst of like the title hunt. And so all of these games, because you've already lost 2 at home, and yet you're 5-0 on the road, which is just nuts. It is. It's just crazy. But your UCF loss on New Year's Eve, and then obviously you lost to Iowa State by a point
in OT.
In OT, yeah. And so these home games are few and far between. You've got to maintain your advantage at home if you want to stay in that title hunt. But you've been out rebounding teams, and that's Norchad O'Meara is going to be a handful tonight for Baylor. But JT Toppin, I know he'll be fresh tonight. He'll be well rested.
Man, that front court matchup between those dudes is going to be fun. They're both a little bit undersized bigs, but who are really good all around players. I mean, that matchup alone is worth the price of admission, Chris. I can't wait for it.
Yeah, and I think these players, they view those matchups. JT he's been mocked in the first rounds of some NBA drafts and things like that, and I think that was the intention as he went through the draft process last year. And okay, I'm not going to take a chance. I'm going to go to school one more year, and he ends up at Texas Tech. But I think he's got eyes on and I've seen him as high as 17. I've seen him as low as 33, 34, whatever. But it's these kinds of matchups that scouts want to see. Yeah. They want to see big time versus big time on individual matchups. Can you score against this guy? Can you rebound against this guy? And so I guarantee you some scouts will be looking at that particular matchup, certainly. But it's exciting. And this league is just a monster. I don't know if it's quite as good as the SEC is this year, but it's just a monster night in and night out. And this past weekend should tell you all you need to know about the zaniness of Big 12 hoops. But this is a big one for the Red Raiders, certainly.
It really is. And so we'll wait to see on the injury status with VJ Edgecombe, certainly, and both Roach and Love coming back. We'll see if Kevin Overton can get back. Obviously, this will be the second game back for Darrion Williams, and we'll see how he holds up after a game back going. And also, Chris, I think a big part of it is there's this massive matchup at Arizona this coming Saturday. And like, as you were just talking about with the craziness of the Big 12, there is no trap game in the Big 12 because you got to look at everyone. But the worst thing you can do is lose a home game that you're favored to win before you go away on the road in a game that you'll probably be the underdog by a couple points. And so that's a key that I'm watching for tonight. Chris, I just want to scale out a little bit and go big picture on this new regime with Coach McCasland. Unfortunately, after Coach Beard goes off to Texas and then everything that happened with there and he winds up at Ole Miss, things just didn't work out with Mark Adams. There was all of that mess. And then comes Grant McCasland from North Texas. Immediately, what does this dude bring to Lubbock last year? Because I don't know about you, but my expectations for Texas Tech preseason, I know things were like maybe a little disappointing with injuries and stuff down the stretch and losing in the first round to that red hot NC State team. But I was really impressed with just the year one takeoff for Grant McCasland.
Yeah, I think the results were a lot better around here than anybody would have guessed last year. And what he's brought is some calm. Which your program needed after a lot of drama in the two previous regimes, or the way that it fell apart, or the way that the exits happened. There was just a lot of drama, and I think he calmed the waters here, which is what you needed. Grant has ties to this place. He was here many, many years ago. I've known him for a long time, and what I told him after the win on Saturday was like, I haven't seen anything like your ability to bring culture and composure and like this heart with this program. Because you just look at Texas Tech, like if you look at them, you eyeball them, or you look at them on paper, you're probably not supposed to do what you're doing right now. But they are extremely well coached. They play really hard. They play the right way. And I think that, to credit Grant, he squeezes as much out of his guys as anybody as I've been around in the Texas Tech football and basketball. And that's the best compliment you can give a coach, because they maximize their potential. And you've had injuries this year. You had some injuries last year with your big fella and Warren Washington and all that. But when healthy, and people have already forgotten about Devin Cambridge.
That's right.
Devin Cambridge was supposed to be a starter type. Yeah, and he's been gone for 6 weeks.
Both
2
last
months
and this year. Yeah.
Correct. So I just they just do it right. And he was very frustrated early on in the season or in the conference season with their lack of defense. Because at North Texas, they would win games in the 50s, and they play elite level defense. And last year they outscored people. This year they're outscoring people, but their defense has really gotten a lot better. And so I think that's why you're starting to see some of these results. Is that they take the show on the road, they can guard you, and they can outscore you at times. But it's just been a pleasure to watch and be around because there's no ego with this team. There's no selfishness on this team. And I think that's a credit to Grant and what he's brought in calm waters, which was needed, certainly.
That's a good word, man. I love some calm waters. I can go hang out in that tranquility any day. And then look, Chris, we fast forward to this year. Through 21 games, it's a game better than last year. 17-4 through 10 Big 12 games. It's 2 games better than last year. And of course, you mentioned those losses earlier. Yeah, there are 4 losses, but it's a grand total of 11 points combined. And that's all with Pop Isaacs, leading scorer, out the door to Creighton. JT Toppin comes in. And I love what you were saying there, Chris. We think back to the Chris Beard national runner-up team in 2019. And I think many people outside Lubbock and outside the Big 12 circle might think Texas Tech, and because of that, immediately go defense first and only and often. But this team is currently 9th at KenPom. If the season ended today, that would be the most efficient Texas Tech team in the entire KenPom era. What is it that makes this offense click while the defense, you're talking about, is coming along? I just want to shine a beautiful spotlight on this offense for a minute.
Grant would tell you he has really skilled players, okay, but and obviously Coach Linder has been had a heavy input on what they do offensively. It's actually pretty. They keep it pretty simple, and I think there's a lot of pick and roll, which is what basketball is, and a lot of. But I think you have a lot of high IQ, and so guys make the right play. You're not the best, assist to turnover team in the country, but you've got a guy like Elijah Hawkins. There was one point in the season where Elijah Hawkins had 55 assists to 4 turnovers in Big 12 play.
That's crazy.
And that's insanity.
Yeah.
To be dropping dimes like that and then taking care of it as well. And so I think he's really helped. But I mentioned Christian Anderson and Chance McMillan. Darrion Williams can be a facilitator. They've just got a lot of good decision makers on the floor. And Grant will tell you, I'm really hard on my point guard, but I'm really hard on my guards in general. And I think they're listening to his messages about all the little things adding up. And so it just helps. The efficiency part helps when you have guys that can flat out shoot it. Yeah. A couple of years ago when Mark's first year, that was one of the best teams that I had seen around here, and they were maybe one of the best defenses in the country. They trotted out, these names, Kevin McCullough, Bryson Williams, TJ Shannon. It went on and on. You were 7 or 8 deep, and you were putting out 6'7", 6'8" across the board. Your guards were 6'5" and 6'4" and things like that, but they had a hard time shooting. They just couldn't score at times. There was these scoring droughts and things like that. This is somewhat the opposite. You're undersized, but you've just got savvy and IQ coming out of your ears, and it's been a lot of fun to watch. So it's hard to recruit that. It's hard to develop that. You can either have it or you don't, but they are maximizing, I think, the decision making, and then it helps when you have guys that can make shots.
And right now, to Chris's point, to give it some stats to back it up, 21st in all of D1. That's all 364 teams at 38.2% from the beyond the arc. That is absolutely bonkers stuff and is a big part of what's going on here. So, Chris, I mentioned on last Friday's episode of Locked On College Basketball that Tech had been flying under the radar, but if they wanted to burst onto the scene and say, "What up, we're here," you go into Houston and you take their cookies and run. That's exactly what they did. Texas Tech, I don't know how people aren't seeing it, but right now they're 8th in the net, 9th at KenPom, 8th at Torvik. like a national audience wants to know, Chris, and I want to ask you, should these Red Raiders be taken seriously? You mentioned it earlier as a Big 12 contender, along with the likes of Houston and Iowa State, and less so Kansas this year. Like, come on, what are we doing? Is it a real thing?
I had my doubts 2 to 3 weeks ago as well. You'd seen the way that the conference records started at the beginning, and you'd lost a couple of home games, and what's still out in front of you and all that, and you win 6 in a row like they have. But it's a win. It's a win over Houston that now basically stamps Big 12 title contender right there on your forehead. They still have another game versus Houston. They have another game versus Arizona. But you look at the standings. You have 2 losses. We've talked about those. But the other 2 teams above you each have 1 loss.
That's right. And
Texas Tech gave each of those teams that loss. So I think by virtue of that, you don't get another crack at Iowa State. And then they are just behind you. So they would own a tiebreaker. But, yeah, I think it may require you to beat Houston a second time. It may require you to, finish this thing at 16-4, 17-3. There's not going to be a lot of margin for error here, but that's why like a game like tonight is massive.
Yes.
But if you, and I don't know if you can go to Tucson and win, but I wasn't sure if you could go to Houston and you've beaten Arizona by 16 already on your home floor. And so that's the data tells you, yes, this team should be taken very seriously. But I think because, to your point, what you mentioned a while ago, there wasn't the expectation to be this good. So I think people are a little late. But you're kind of kicking the door in right now. And if you can kind of keep this thing going, look out, because you're right there. You are right there.
And let me zoom back out one further level, Chris, and then I got one final quick question. We'll get you out of here. I think in the Chris Beard era, there was always this wonderment of like, how long is this going to last? Is he going to cut and run for Texas? Things like that, right? And I was hopeful that he would stay in Lubbock, but I think we all probably saw the writing on the wall a little bit. Is there a longer version of Beard era hope of long-term sustainability with this thing under Coach McCasland?
I think they take basketball very seriously here. They put a lot of resources behind it. NIL, they've got a $50 million practice-only facility across the street from what is one of the best arenas in the Big 12. I absolutely think you can sustain this. It just, you needed to calm the waters. You need to find the right guy that wants to be here long-term. And Grant has ties here, as I mentioned. And so as long as I think have those resources and you use them wisely, there's no reason why, especially in the Big 12, why you can't be a factor every single year. And that includes the Houston and the Kansases and, the Baylors, because that's why this league is, I mean, how many different teams have you sent to the Final Four in the last, 6 to 8 years? You played for one, but how many other teams have won a national championship? I mean, it's just, and Kansas State with their Elite Eight run a couple years ago. But this league is loaded, and I think because of the coaching is elite, there's resources in this deal, and I think Texas Tech is right there and should always be a top half. So you can absolutely sustain it, and I think Grant has eyes on doing just that. I mean, I don't think that will be a lot of fun for Texas Tech fans. Is him be here long term, and if so, I think based on what we've seen, it's a snapshot. He's been pretty darn successful in a year and a half here. It's been really impressive.
And no reason to think it's going anywhere else as long as those waters stay calm, which we expect them to. I know, we're talking Chance McMillan, but I know my own extended family in-laws who are also McMillans, and Texas Tech alum will be very elated to hear that news. Speaking of Texas Tech alum, Chris, last question I told you, we got a big football game coming up this Sunday with a notable Texas Tech alum having a pretty decently big role in that game. What are the vibes around Lubbock right now ahead of this potential three-peat?
I had no idea that Pat Mahomes went to Texas Tech. That is news to me. Yeah. I mean, no, there are, Isaac, all kidding aside, there are loads of, I joke with a lot of them because I'm like, there's just so many lifelong Chiefs fans around Lubbock, Texas all of a sudden. It's funny. It just popped up about 6 or 7 years ago. And so many people from Lubbock go up to Chiefs games that kind of like disown the Cowboys, and I don't know how long that will last. It's probably all related to Mahomes, but yeah, I mean, it's almost like Texas Tech's played in the Super Bowl on Sunday. Don't I wish? Pat's just phenomenal. He loves this place back as much as this place loves him. And he got the Adidas deal done for your university, a 10-year deal, and all the stuff. And I just think it's a lot of fun for everybody around here because they're kind of living vicariously through him. And I mean, you do what he's doing in your 20s, and you go win 17 one-score games in a row in that league. Unheard of. And it's crazy that he's being mentioned with the Bradys and the Montanas and the Mannings, and he's 29. I mean, and that he has every right to be mentioned with those guys. It's just insanity. And but he's special, and he's just got it. Whatever it is, he's got it, man. And yeah, there'll be a lot of people in Lubbock rooting for the Chiefs. Plus, you know, I mean, as a Cowboy fan growing up, I can't root for the Eagles. I mean, I just can't do it. Yeah,
no, that NFC East don't run.
Yeah, that's right. That's right,
dude. And I feel what you're saying about all these Chiefs fans in Lubbock, because I went to college in East Tennessee in the early 2000s, and so there were suddenly all these Colts fans everywhere. It was the craziest thing, all these Manning fans. But where I live, 2 hours directly south of Arrowhead, there are young men everywhere getting perms and shaving the side. I mean, it's the craziest thing. And so that's great. Look, Chris Level, thank you so much. You know, off the top, we talked a little about what all you're into, but let everybody know where they can find you and your great work, man.
Yeah, well, Isaac, you were very kind to have me today and kind of give the Red Raiders a voice nationally. But yeah, Casey Cowan and I, we've done radio in Lubbock for you know, I'm going to mumble the word just so it doesn't give away my age, but you know, we transitioned over to doing this, and we do, you know, obviously do Locked On Texas Tech 5 days a week, and it's been a great outlet for both of us. We love it. Hopefully everybody out there that listens and watches us enjoys it as well, but that's where you can find us. And if you ever tune into a Texas Tech football or basketball game, you can hear me on the air there as well as do the work for the old Red Raiders through Learfield. So anyway, it's fun. I get to be a part of what I enjoy doing, man. And what they always say is, man, if you find something like that and get paid for it, you're not having to work. So that's where we're at. But Isaac, you do good work, man. You're crushing it. You were very kind to have me on. I hope everybody out there has a great rest of the week, and keep hope alive, everybody.
Let's go get those guns up, folks. Let's see them make it happen. Folks, thanks so much for tuning in. As Chris said, make sure you go follow the great work there that he and Mr. Cowan are doing for Locked On Texas Tech. It's really, really good stuff. If you haven't subscribed to our show, both on video and audio, make sure you do that as well. So easy to join. If you haven't joined the Locked On College Basketball Discord community, we would love to have you there. It's free to join. That link is in the show notes. As always, I want to say apologies to the Lawyer family. Let's go Wild, folks. Shouts to our guy, Mick Bruins. And until tomorrow, peace.